Most people struggle in relationships and in life because they don't understand their own energy or the energetic dynamics that they're participating in. When we talk about masculine energy, we're not talking about personality traits or gender roles. We're talking about the polarity of energy that exists within all of us. And when these polarities, these dynamics are out of balance within us, we see that reflected in our relationships and our attraction patterns and the way that we're relating to the outside world. Welcome to the Conscious Partnership Project. My name is Emily, and in this video I want to talk about what exactly is masculine energy when you hear people talking about that, and what it's often confused for, and how we can learn to activate and embody healthy masculine energy within us. So I just want to start going over this list of what people often misconstrue the concept of masculine energy to mean. So again, we're talking about energetic qualities, not personality traits. So what often gets thrown out in, terms of masculinity are these concepts of being dominant or being aggressive, being emotionally unavailable, being stoic, being the provider only, being in control all the time, being loud, being alpha, never needing help from other people, not showing emotion, making all the decisions, being successful, rich, powerful, being physically strong, and being hyper independent. So these are often, qualities that get asserted as like these representations of masculinity, but they actually are not touching on the deeper energetics of what masculine energy actually is. So when we talk about what masculine energy actually is, I want to break this down, and I want to talk a little bit about this book. So this book is called King, Warrior, Magician, Lover. This is a great book. I highly recommend reading it. It's not a super long book, but it talks about the different archetypes of masculine energy. And so I kind of wanted to talk about those and break those down a little bit. And I think that the tarot also gives a great visual representation of what this is. And I like to kind of talk about the tarot and incorporate the tarot because when we are talking about things like energy is very conceptual, right? And so the tarot is just another tool of giving a visual or giving a tangible representation of something that is energetic. And so that's what we're trying to do, is we're trying to give this language to something that is hard to articulate, it's hard to put into form. And so tools like tarot and like books like these, they do a great job in illustrating those things. So when we think of the tarot and we have the representations of masculinity, I like to think of the emperor as sort of like the embodiment of all four of the aspects of like healthy masculinity. So one of those aspects is the king. And the king, in his highest expression, represents stability, responsibility, leadership through service, structure. And in this book, when they talk about each of the archetypes of like embodied masculine energy, they give each archetype a spectrum, right? So, and on this spectrum, there's the passive aspects of that archetype, and there's the active aspects of that archetype. So we're always working on this spectrum of these two poles. And so when the king energy is out of balance, on one end, it's going to be tyrannical, right? So this is where we get like authoritarianism, and we get that like dominant, controlling energy, right? And then on the other side of that, the negative pole of that is like the weakling, right? So like someone who needs to be like constantly catered to and taken care of, right? And in this book, what I also really like is they talk about what sort of like the boy aspects of these are versus once you have actually been initiated in certain ways into manhood. And they do talk about how in modern culture, because there is such a lack of healthy masculine role models and healthy masculine leadership, a lot of modern men are not even really initiated in a lot of ways into manhood, and they often embody these childlike archetypes throughout their life. And the childlike archetype of the king is kind of like, the high chair tyrant, right? Like the demanding child that you can't say no to them, and they sort of like run the house, right? Like everyone bows down to their needs and their emotions. And then on the other end of that is like the weak little prince who like is just kind of spoiled and catered to, right? And can't do anything for himself. So the king, if we were to break down like the four kings that we have, which are kind of like the four representations of masculinity within the tarot, the king would be represented by the King of Pentacles, right? So this represents the pentacles, which is like earth energy. It's the tangible, the physical, the structure, right? So then we move into the warrior. And the warrior in its highest expression is the protector. It's a man who lives in integrity. It's a man who lives with a deep sense of presence, has the ability to create safety around them, right? And so when we look at the two poles of when that energy is out of balance, we have on one end the sadist and on one end the masochist, right? So, and then if we look at that and we take that into kind of like the childlike, the boyhood archetypes, on one end we have the bully, and on the other end we have the coward, right? So like the sadist is the aggressor. It's actually the opposite of like creating a protective, safe space, right? They're using their power to aggress, to manipulate, to to take. And then the coward or the masochist is like unable to even protect themselves or assert themselves, and like actually like seeks out like dysfunction within themselves, right? Like the masochist like seeks out to be hurt, or seeks out ways in which they are not, creating a safe container for themselves and protecting themselves. So the warrior in relation to the tarot would be the King of Wands, because the Wands is fire. Fire represents the spiritual, right? And so the King of Wands is the warrior aspect. And when they're in their highest expression, they are, full of vitality and life, and they create that feeling of safety within and around themselves. So the third archetype of masculine energy is the magician. And the magician represents direction. So having a clear direction, being able to build things and create things. It represents the ability to make decisions and to actualize vision. So to bring vision to fruition. So when we're looking at the two polarities of when this energy is out of balance, we have the detached manipulator, so the person who uses their intellect and their knowledge and their capacity to create and do all these things, but they use it to take from others. They use it to self-serve. They use it, in manipulative ways. And then on the other end of that spectrum, we have like the quote unquote innocent one, the one that like denies any responsibility or culpability. Like they are never, it's never, they're not, it's like, what's the word? Weaponized incompetence would be a good example of that. And when we talk about this in like the childlike form, we have like the know-it-all and the dummy. So we have like the child that like you can't get through to them because they just think that they have all the answers and they know all the things. And then we have the child that is like, plays dumb, right? And so when we're talking about the magician, that energy is the King of Swords in the tarot. So that the swords represent intellect, right? And so this is the aspect of the masculine that comes down to like the way you think and your thought process. And then we have the lover, and the lover is all about emotional steadiness, commitment, and containment of your energy. And the two polarities when this energy is out of balance are addicted energy and impotent energy. So think of that like, when a man is too much in that sort of lover energy, right? They can become really impulsive and like really kind of scattered in their energy. And then if we have like on the other end of that, impotent, it's like unable to actually go for anything or actualize anything. Like there's like that lack of virality, right? And then from the child aspect of this, there's like the mama's boy, and then there's like the dreamer. So there's the one who is lacking in autonomy because they have this relationship to the mother where the mother like caters to them and does everything for them, and they become like dependent on that. And you can see that, in modern relationships, when like a man hasn't healed that aspect of themselves, they look for that in women, right? They look for women to be their mother, to take the place of their mother. And then on the other end of that, as like the dreamer, this is like the man who's like lives in his head and is unable to actually create connection and like share emotion or share like himself, his vulnerability with others and with the world. And so the lover in the tarot is going to be the King of Cups, because the cups represent emotions, and water represents emotions, and so the King of Cups is going to be our representation there in the tarot. And so we have these four aspects, right? We have the earth aspect, which is the tangible, the physical. We have the fire aspect, which is the spiritual self. We have the intellect, the air aspect, and we have the cups, which is, water and emotion, the emotional aspect. So those four aspects make up the emperor. When a man balances out, centers himself in the energy of the warrior, the lover, the magician, and the king, he becomes the emperor, right? He becomes the embodiment of all of those things. And so why does this matter? Because balancing the masculine, so the masculine energy is not just, it doesn't only exist in male-bodied people, right? So especially like in today's world where like gender is much more of like, we have much more of like a fluid understanding of it. These aspects exist as polarities within all of us, okay? So we all have masculine energy within ourselves, and we all have feminine energy within ourselves. And so, yes, if you are, a man and you are, more drawn to this, like what I'm saying, these masculine aspects of self, you're going to be the embodiment of these energies than someone who is more of like a feminine person, right? But if we're able to balance all of these aspects within ourselves and to know and understand these aspects within ourselves, we are not only going to be able to create more harmonious ways of living within our own life, we're going to be able to find balance in relationships with people who bring aspects that like complement our aspects that we excel at, right? And so it's like understanding the balance and polarity within yourself so that you can then come into a stronger energetic match with someone who is truly like the counterpart to your energy. So when we are, in alignment, when our energy is balanced and clear, we're able to create attraction and magnetism, right? So that's what these two energies are. Like think of masculine energy and feminine energy as the positive and the negative, right? Think of them as two sides of a magnet. Like they have the capacity to draw themselves together or to repel, right? That is an aspect of magnetism, is attraction and being able to repel things that are not in alignment for you. So these opposite energies, they create tension, and tension creates attraction, it creates inertia, it creates growth, it creates expansion, it creates matter, right? And so the balance of these two energies is like the balance of structure and flow, direction and vision, presence and expression, stability and movement. Think of it like the sperm and the egg, right? Like those two aspects of, like, you know, physical representations of the masculine and feminine, they have two very different roles, right? Like the egg holds the container, the sperm takes the action, right? So when these energies are out of balance, they can create power struggles within relationships, they can create a lack of motivation, a lack of growth. And so when you hear like this concept of creating inner union before experiencing outer union, it's like learning how to embody these aspects within the self so that you can be a fully autonomous, self-realized, self-actualized individual. And it's also learning to love the opposite within the self, right? So if we can't understand and love the masculine aspects of ourselves as a woman, how are we going to be able to love that in another, right? And vice versa. Like, and this is a big part of what I think the collective is working on and healing, is learning to like love those parts of ourselves, because we've actually been taught to like reject them in a lot of ways, or to express them in like unhealthy ways. So ways that you can strengthen and develop the masculine energy within yourself, and this is for men, for women, for whoever is watching, this is all about how you relate to concepts like discipline, responsibility, and structure. So that energy grows through commitment and follow through. This is like a really important one, right? Taking responsibility for your life, another really important one. So like if we're, and it goes back with like the archetypes that I was breaking down, and that makes sense, right? Like, are we you know, playing innocent in situations where we're not, or are we like weaponizing incompetence to get out of doing things? It's like learning to take responsibility for yourself and your actions and your life that you're living. Learning to develop direction and vision. So asking questions like, where am I going? What am I building? Learning how to make decisions and commit to them. So not being wishy-washy, not going back on the things that you say. Building structure in your life. So good examples of this are like morning routines, workout routines, financial structure, work structure, goals, planning, time management, right? Like these are all examples of like learning how to build and create healthy structures in your life. Learning to set boundaries, very important. And like you can see as I'm going through this list, like why this isn't about like being a man. Everyone benefits from working on these types of things, right? And like as a woman, if you're listening to this and you're like recognizing where maybe you are bad at time management, or maybe where your finances are out of alignment, where can you start to create more structure and embody into that king energy within yourself, right? And then following through and keeping your word. This is a huge one. This is all about integrity, right? So like, what do you have at the end of the day if you don't have your word? If your word means nothing? I think that this is a really, really important aspect of cultivating a sense of integrity, learning to trust yourself, trust the things that you say, and others will trust you as a reflection of that, right? Doing difficult things on purpose. So whether that's working out, whether it's having difficult conversations that you've been putting off, maybe it's building a business, maybe it's learning something new, having financial discipline, waking up early, finishing your projects, holding high standards. Difficult when, you know, maybe you haven't always done that, right? Like that, you know, having high standards and like actually holding your standards requires a sense of sacrifice in certain ways. It requires overcoming addiction, right? Overcoming the things that the patterns that we've gotten used to that keep us feeling comfortable. You can take risks, face fears, right? Like this is an important part of embodying your masculine energy, is to look at the things that scare you and to confront them, right? To like do the thing that frightens you and allow yourself to like face that fear. So your masculine energy is built every time that you choose responsibility over comfort, right? Direction over distraction, and discipline over impulse. You strengthen your energy by becoming someone who can be trusted both by yourself and by others. So when we talk about masculine energy, like we're not obviously just talking about what it means to be a man, but these things that I broke down, like they are the embodiment of true masculine energy, right? Like to be stable, to be a person of integrity, to be a person of emotion and love and vulnerability, to be a protector, like, you know. And so learning how to balance and harmonize these aspects of yourself. And in my next video, I'm going to break down what feminine energy is, and we're going to get into how these energies work together and how they exist within all of us. And I'm going to go a little bit deeper in another video into what it actually truly means to have polarity within the self, to have inner union within the self, and what that looks like in relation to others. So I hope that you have a beautiful rest of your day, and I will talk with you again soon.